Okay, so we got our notes on the Chosen One. The reasons why Husai is what he is, and how that impacts the story. How his influence for specifically, his search for illusion magic. True! Okay. So, Husai's human. I guess that should actually be the first one. There are no humans. No one knows what a human is. Except for Gaia. So Husai's human. There are no humans. Husai's the product of a several thousand-year-long genetic experiment by the good partition of the Viceroy's brain. Through small manipulations from Gaia, he was able to construct a life form. This brain could handle the pressure of Gaia's influence without eviscerating it. Husai's reason for existence is hidden. He has a desire to learn who he is. His facilitation of Gaia's influence leads to the discovery of the Warriors of Light and the dark side of the Monarch, as well as his search for illusion magic. In his search, for illusion magic, he gains a standing of the world he can't put into words until he interrogates Hildred. So illusion magic doesn't work, but he knows illusion magic exists because he is a human, and people see him as an octopi, and he's like, that's not right, something's wrong here, I don't know what's going on, but I need to find out. Plus there's the subtle hint in the back of his mind from Gaia to tell him to search for these things. But that's our understanding of what the Chosen One is. Let's see how that holds up.
The Chosen One. Alongside magical swords, dead parents, and terrible movie adaptations, this is one of fantasy and sci-fi's favorite storytelling tropes, which also means that people have strong feelings about whether or not you should use it. I mean, it's not uncommon to hear, hey, I was thinking of writing a Chosen One.
How dare you say that to me?
You are dead to me.
But there is a world of difference between a trope that negatively impacts writing by its mere existence and one that just feels overused or feels unimaginative. So today we'll be talking about what makes them work and what makes them not work. But in particular, I want to talk about some less common things that writers might think about. We'll be breaking this down into 4 parts: supporting characters, destiny quests, character development, and narrative structure. Also, I'm really happy to say that today's video is sponsored by VRV. So VRV is a place with 12 amazing channels with the best anime, animation, gaming, comedy, fantasy, and technology shows, including, and this is the cool thing, a number of the stories I've actually referenced before in the On Writing series, like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, which you need to watch. And it's all in one environment, more on them later, but if you want to support our own true Chosen One, destined to save all of existence and demand cuddle, supreme leader Mishka, then go to this link down in the description below for a 30-day ad-free trial. So, Chosen Ones and supporting characters. One of the underestimated effects of having a Chosen One in your story is its effect on the place of your supporting characters. Chosen Ones naturally create a central point of tension in the narrative, that they're the only ones who can defeat the Dark Lord, wield the MacGuffin of power, or inherit the throne, deciding where the story is headed and who gets in the way. But that point of tension is usually focused around one character, otherwise known as the Chosen One. And that's all well and good, but it can leave the supporting characters with what feels like a minimal role, or one that's just reduced to them being the main character's backup dancers. If the Chosen One is the only person in the world who can resolve the central point of tension in the the story, then the supporting characters can feel isolated from the climax to the reader. It can feel like they have no agency, that it doesn't matter whether they're there or not, because ultimately, if they aren't the chosen one, then they can't play a consequential role. This is largely because the dramatic thread of the story has been built around the chosen one's destiny, whatever it may be. So how do you involve supporting characters in the tension of a chosen one's story? One of the best ways is to give each supporting character their own dramatic thread that builds alongside the chosen ones in the narrative. My favorite example of this is, guess what? Avatar: The Last Airbender, the godsend of storytelling. So the Avatar is the chosen one, the only person who can defeat the Fire Lord, but the climax doesn't just revolve around that battle. The supporting characters in this story, Zuko, Katara, Toph, and Sokka, each have their own battles to fight, completely separate from any force of destiny that guides the battle between the Avatar and the Fire Lord. Brother-sister tensions are built to a climax when Katara and Zuko take on Azula, and Sokka's leadership is tested when they take on the battle fleet. More importantly, the story spent way more time emphasizing the tension between Zuko and Azula than it ever did the tension between the Avatar and the Fire Lord, meaning it was actually that battle, completely unrelated to the Chosen One, that felt more tense for the viewers at the climax. By building conflicts around supporting characters earlier in the narrative that don't arise from the chosenness element, not only does this give supporting characters integral roles to play in the climax, but it supports the agency of all characters. These threads can relate to the
So this would be like, an example of this would be if the like how Gluttony and Various use their writing and entertainment skills and people skills, essentially, in order to facilitate the rise of Husai after Zaid's death. Hildebrandt is there to basically show how harsh being an adventurer can be, like, mentally, essentially. Because she gives up on being an adventurer and becomes a crafter after their fourth party member dies. I mean, Zaid's there to die. Sid's the leader of the crafting guild, so he has all the information and everything that does with crafting in Atomus. Yap and Walker are basically Various's guides, because Various can't, or Gluttony's guides, because Gluttony can't really leave the guild hall, so they're like his apprentices in the fact of trying to discover what's going on with the Beastmen and signs of a dragon or something along those lines. Even the squires themselves, all the squires will have their own storyline based around the caravan of the adventurers itself, and, like, you know, preparing food, making sure that the armor's checked, making sure that, like, the wagons work, feeding the chocobos, taking care of the chocobos, maybe even, like, taking care of, like, training regiments and shit like that. So it's like one giant ball of, what's that, prospect for each character, and it's all woven together, because, yeah, sure, Husai is the only one who can truly understand and discover what's going on with the Monarch, but he's not the only one who can essentially fight against the Monarch, because even though he does, he loses, and Gaia still has to destroy the planet. But and it's not like Husai is necessarily any more powerful. It's the Warriors of Light who are the main point, but they don't come into the story until later. At least their significance in the story doesn't come later. So their whole sideline story doesn't even get revealed of who they are yet, so you think they're kind of useless, I guess, until you find out who they actually are, and then that expands the entire dark side of the guild, as well as, like, the main viceroy, the current viceroy, and the monarch in the tree, their concubines, and the governmental system, and how the people are voting in that case to get rid of adventurers out of the tree, or thinking that the monarch is going to allow the viceroy to allow beastmen inside of the tree because they're scared that that's going to be somehow a way that they're going to infiltrate it, and because they don't trust the monarch's abilities anymore, essentially, they're going to have a huge problem with finding out that the Adventurers Guild can't do anything either. So it's seeming like they're choosing lesser of two evils, almost, with kicking the Adventurers Guild out. And it's like, even with that, Husai's like chosen one kind of abilities because he can get in and out of the tree even if the monarch technically locks him out, like he did all the adventurers. But Husai can get back in and so can the viceroy, and that's what allows them to discover Zaid, which then is the crash and fall and burn, and then it really requires all of the main side characters to convince Husai that life is still worth living kind of idea, and bring him back out of his seclusion and depression in order to lead them to the victory that they truly need.
Chosen one, but shouldn't be dependent on it. With this, the reader is left feeling that the story couldn't have been concluded without them. This is because even if the Chosen One fulfills their destiny, a large part of the tension that has been built throughout the story hasn't been satisfactorily resolved. Now, one way that authors put a twist on this is not to have one chosen character, but many chosen characters. Heroes of Olympus by
Technically
Rick Riordan
5.
is one example of this, where each of the main characters play a role in the prophecy. You could even go full Old Testament and do the whole chosen people, or dial that up even higher again and have a chosen one within that chosen people. Secondly, Destiny quests. When used well, the forces of fate and destiny can create interesting challenges for characters, but the difficult thing is, well, doing that right. So the trend of Chosen One stories has been that whatever the Chosen One has to do, it must be a good thing, because destiny, and who could possibly have a problem with destiny, right? And even if that destiny isn't entirely predictable, or maybe it has a prophecy that says someone will die, the characters still tend to agree that fulfilling that prophecy is a good thing, except for the bad guys, because it, usually ends up in them dying. Now, this setup isn't inherently a bad thing, but it's often criticized because it doesn't necessarily add anything to the narrative. Instead, it can undermine dramatic tension by making it so that when the heroes do succeed, the reader doesn't feel it's entirely because the characters fought for it, but because Chosen One.
True.
Or it can have the unintended effect of making the story morally simple, that one outcome must be good and the other outcome must be bad just because they're the Chosen One. This setup can come across as stale and predictable to readers, so let's talk about two interesting ways to distinguish a Chosen One story from this common setup. One way is to have them chosen for something that they actively want to stop, and this trope goes way back, like to the Greek story of Oedipus and beyond. But my favorite example of this is Supernatural, or as I like to call it, Love Conquers All, but I swear we're not gay, where the two main characters, Dean and Sam, turn out to be the chosen ones, destined to help bring the apocalypse, which neither of them want for the obvious reason that they sort of have a thing for being alive and existing. On top of that, one of them is destined to be the villain during it, and the other the hero, sort of. And in the lead up to all of this, they actively talked about how they were struggling with the idea that if destiny was a thing, then nothing they ever decided really mattered. It was a heartbreaking but beautiful moment when they managed to stop half of it coming true. Having the chosen ones actively oppose their chosenness complicates that central point of tension. It can add layers to the narrative.
Or not having any
facilitating
idea
interesting
about it.
thematic exploration.
I know I'm chosen one, I guess,
Weakening
but I don't
the
know what to
dramatic
do with
tension,
that.
it adds to it by forcing them to fight against something that feels unstoppable. Destiny, either heightening that sense of achievement if they manage to avoid it, or making the emotional impact heavier if they follow it. On a side note, this sometimes manifests in the whole you can't avoid destiny storyline, which writers commonly handle by having the destiny come true, just not in the way that the characters or the readers expect.
True.
This is usually to do with a prophecy chosen one, and while it does add a mystery thread to the narrative,
And it's like, it's not really a prophecy, but what happens in chapter 3 is Husai's basically told what to do. Find the tablet that will show you the Warriors of Light. Sounds simple enough. It's not fucking simple.
narrative, it can yet feel stale because it often A, still makes the story morally simple, and B, still undermines dramatic tension by making the protagonist's achievements feel less their own. If you really want to set your story apart from this common setup, it may be more interesting to ask other questions. What's the fallout from avoiding destiny? What are the consequences? Maybe the prophecy will change in response, or it'll pick a new chosen one, or fate will turn against the good guys entirely. And in the very rare case, the whole you can't avoid destiny story can appear in the antagonists themselves being the chosen one, which makes it absolute hell for the main characters to defeat them, because who can control destiny? This is what happened in Spyro Dawn of the Dragon, where Malefor was the chosen purple dragon, destined to destroy the world, and he actually succeeded for a little bit. A second way to make the destiny thread more interesting is to have a destiny that isn't inherently good or bad.
Yeah.
This allows the author to give characters
Because he doesn't, like... Life in the Tree is great. Why would you want to get rid of the Monarch and the Viceroy? Like, they absolutely seem to know what they're doing. So it's like, it's almost... Well, it is actually a really bad thing that they do fulfill destiny, because they blow up the fucking planet in the process. So it's like, well, shit, what are you gonna do? There's not much, leeway on each side in order to give you the idea that at the end this was probably the worst decision to make. But it equals out to the fact of, if this didn't happen, Gaia wouldn't be able to challenge Anima, and no one would be challenging Anima. This could be possibly one of the only planets in the universe that created a weapon that can be used in a way to facilitate either the defeat or just the slowing down or pausing of Anima's consumption of all of existence. Because at the end of the day, the consumption of all of existence into Anima is the ultimate bad thing to happen. And that is why Gaia created Husai, in order to stop the Monarch. Because he's being controlled by Anima.
different perspectives on the chosen one, to draw attention not from merely asking whether they can succeed in stopping or fulfilling their destiny, but asking whether that destiny should be fulfilled,
True.
whether there are more pressing concerns, or whether the methods required to follow that destiny are even justified. Now, I don't think
justified or even possible to do. Husai has no idea, because he still has never figured out illusion magic. So it's like, he considers himself to be pretty, like, back line support strategist thinker, not really a fighter. But because he's gone from being like a frontline two-hander to a scholar and a mage to a bureaucrat, and now he's back in the field, and he's kind of training in secret, like, not really in secret, but it's like, you know, got a lot of things to do. When those things are done, it's usually pretty late, so, you know, he goes off and does his own thing. Retraining with his sword to build his muscle mass, so now he has, like, this understanding of magic and his physical ability to fight. So by the time the second book comes around and the Warriors of Light are revealed, he's on the front lines with them and all the Guardians and everything. So it's like, you know, it's like 17 people on the field at that point in time. And that's before they even get, like, the other side, which is, like, the black market members and stuff like that, that get them the information to find relics. And the information about the other dragons as well. Because the other dragons, at this point, the fact that the octopi from the bottom of the ocean have come back to fight during the battle and to align themselves with Fafnir is because now the dragons that were basically making the currents in the water in the ocean in order to make sure that the planet didn't die after the moon fell out of the sky, because there's basically killed all the currents and tides and everything, and the whole ocean went stagnant and things started to die. So the octopi went to the dragons to say, hey, can you guys recreate those currents? Well, we build machines that'll do it for us. We just need like a couple hundred years. And it's been like 600 years. Actually, probably like 400 years. And they're now, basically stabilized enough that they can leave. So during the final great epic battle and everything, it'll be like the 6 dragons plus all the main characters and everything duking it out against the Viceroy and the Monarch.
This idea fully explored before, but the closest that I could find to it is George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. In that story, there are a bunch of chosen ones, all chosen for different things, and not only does Cersei think that there are more pressing concerns for her to think about, but tensions rise between Davos and Melisandre over whether the methods by which the prophecy can be fulfilled are justified or even moral, and Rhaegar may have thought that in order to fulfill it, he had to cheat on his wife, marry or kidnap a particular girl, and plunge the entire continent into civil war. The story isn't predictable and the tension is never lost for the reader because the question of whether the chosen one will fulfill their destiny is just one of many dramatic threads around the whole concept. Likewise, The Matrix subverts the whole chosen one idea in a really interesting way. There, it turns out that there have been many chosen ones in the past before Neo, but while fulfilling each of their destinies might save lives, it probably meant sacrificing the last free city of humans. Not only did other characters within the story disagree on the value of fulfilling it, but the chosen ones themselves disagreed. Giving a chosen one a morally ambiguous fate removes that central point of tension from asking simply whether the heroes will succeed in stopping or fulfilling it, which the reader knows that the heroes generally will. Rather, the central point of tension arises from the philosophical and character conflicts around the idea of the destiny itself.
Yeah.
This alone can make for a fascinating character-driven chosen one story, and it allows the narrative to avoid binary depictions of morality, like good versus evil. Thirdly, character development and narrative structure, and I'm going to talk about these two things together because they're sort of intrinsically linked. Because conversely, having a chosen one means that writers can run the risk of undermining character motivation and the ability of the reader to empathize with that character. This is because the cosmic wizards of fate don't always care about what's going on in the world when picking the chosen one, meaning it can come across as cheap if the only reason that this mysterious farm boy with a 110% dead parents is the only one who has the ability to stop the Dark Lord is because chosen one, or that the only reason the main character begins the quest is because chosen one. The problem with this narratively is that it reduces your protagonist to a placeholder character. The reader can feel that the character's actions have nothing to do with who they are as an individual, and this is likewise if the relationships they have with the antagonist and supporting characters have little to do with who they are as people and everything to do with their chosenness. It makes them unrelatable to the reader because people don't just do things. The reader can't empathize with their journey if it isn't motivated in a way that they can understand. I mean, none of us are chosen ones, or maybe you are. Don't let me tell the cosmic space wizards who to pick. A wizard did it. Because of this, it's important to give the chosen one character arcs and motivation outside their chosenness. Sometimes this can be as simple as defending their loved ones, but it can also be far more complex than that. A great example of this is in Terry Pratchett's The Color of Magic, where the main character, Rincewind, doesn't run away to prevent one of the most powerful spells in the universe from falling into the hands of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but because he was a coward and a really bad wizard who could never hold his own anyway. And the way that his relationship with Twoflower, the supporting character, develops also has nothing to do with his chosenness. Another example is Katniss in The Hunger Games, who is sort of a chosen one to lead the rebellion, but she doesn't do what she does just because chosen one, but because she wants to escape it all, because she wants revenge on President Snow. And she doesn't really grow into the role. She pretends to be someone she's not for the sake of the rebellion. Multiple elements of motivation make the chosen one more realistic and allow the writer to create interesting struggles where the chosen one's personal motivation conflicts with their motivation to do their duty. But when considering character development, even more so with chosen ones, it's important to consider narrative structure. The first act of a story is where the author indicates to the reader the most important desires, relationships, and points of development for a character. Meaning this is where the setup is most crucial. This is why character conflicts and unplanned sequels often feel jarring, because the author never indicated the struggle was of any importance in the first act. Chosen one stories can feel like any character motivation or choices are being weakened by, or at worst, being substituted for arbitrary decisions of the universe. This makes them less relatable. It's important to establish the character as a person apart from their chosenness, and this needs to be within the first act. Why is the character doing what they do, and why do they have certain kinds of relationships with other characters?
And the entire, like, the end of the first act is basically the, I don't know if it's at the point of the fall, after the attack on Garuda, or if the end of the first act is Husai finally coming back. So it's like the play and the immortalization of Zaid, and then Husai's rise back to being his leader, being the leader that he knows he needs to be. That initiates the second act, which is basically the search for armor and gear. It's the grind. It's the grind to go get Atomas, finish the 100-year quest, tag along with a bunch of other adventurers and do a bunch of raids on the new sky cities that have appeared. And basically, because those areas have never been looted, essentially, before, they got a bunch of new goodies and stuff like that. And they'll have a lot of backup stuff they're not going to be able to use because they're going to have Atomas, but they don't have the means by which to ignite the forge. They literally need Dragon's Breath. And so, like, well, we have these, like, kind of... Like, they do as best they can fixing up the armor and the weapons in order to use them. They're kind of at, like, 20% strength, but they're still pretty strong. So when they go up against Fafnir, he's like, alright, you guys kind of have some sort of game to you. Let's sit down and talk about this shit. And that's where they're like, wait, what's going on here? Everything just kind of backfires, and everyone has to take a step back and be like, wait, Fafnir's the good guy? What? And then it just kind of flips everything on its head. Where you're like, wait, what is this? What's going on? Why are you doing this? And then it's like, okay. They get the forge. They forge all the weapons and armor, and then they head to the tree to attack the Monarch. So that's like literally at the very end of the first book. So that would be like the end of the second act would be them getting Atomas. Which I haven't decided whether Atomas is the 100-year quest or it's adjacent to that in some way, shape, or form. And then on top of it, there's all of Husai's former comrades that he adventured with in his youth that are all the leaders of each of the cities, which they'll be going to each of the main cities to pick up those characters to add them to the party.
Treat them as people first and chosen ones second. In the same way, it can be hard for a reader to empathize with their whole character development if it's entirely centered around the cosmic forces of destiny. Instead, it's far more interesting when the narrative sets up struggles and character arcs for the chosen one that aren't dependent on their chosenness. A particularly common way is for the story to treat the destiny thread as a subplot, often emphasizing the struggles that come from being the chosen one while trying to maintain some semblance of a normal life. One example of this is from Jake Long, American Dragon, where most of the drama in the series came from him trying to be a normal kid facing school drama, pursuing his love interest, and making his mum happy. Despite being the chosen one, his character development is largely about maturing and becoming less impulsive and arrogant. Giving the chosen one struggles that don't rely on their chosenness humanizes them to the reader, but as before, this relatable point of conflict needs to be set up in the first act. Not only does this give the arc more time to develop, but it immediately sets up a more relatable dramatic thread that the reader can't know if they'll be able to overcome. But we need to talk about special powers, because how chosen are you really if you don't have flashy powers to show for it? It's important to note that it comes across as weak writing if the only reason that the chosen one...
Different species. He's a chosen one because of his mind's ability to interact with Gaia and actually influence his life and literally talk to him and stuff like that, whereas the best she can do with everyone else is like the smallest inkling of an idea to push them in the right direction. But it's completely up to that character whether they even recognize what that is and how that will affect them.
Develops such powerful abilities isn't because they worked for it, but because the Cosmic Space Wizards did it and said, chosen one. And this applies the same if they just get it dramatically easier than everyone else, even if they don't get it with a click of their fingers. An absolutely fantastic subversion of this actually comes from a game, The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, where you think that you're the Chosen One and people certainly tell you that you are, but the trials that you had to go through to master the abilities you hold could have been done by, well, anyone. They were just incredibly difficult and you happened to be the first person to do it successfully. By the end of the story, you realize that there isn't any meaningful distinction between you being special and you working for it. Even if they're the Chosen One, it's important to make sure the reader feels they've worked for their powers. Only then can it feel like an achievement when they master the ability, whatever it is. But none of this means that they shouldn't have any character arcs or struggles related to their chosenness. The most common story thread around Chosen Ones is for them to doubt that they can accomplish what they're destined to do. This is one of the reasons that
Or not
Aragorn
know
from the
what
Lord
it
of the Rings
is.
movie was far more interesting than the one from the books. They played up his self-doubt around whether he was ready to ascend to the throne and wield the sword Anduril. But this particular storyline is so common that it really falls into that overused and unimaginative group. So if you really want to distinguish your Chosen One's story, you might want to find a different character struggle to focus on. Maybe the Chosen One believes it's entirely fictional, like in the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, where the main character goes out of his way to pretend the world he's meant to save doesn't even exist. An interesting subversion of the usual Chosen One paradigm is in Lois Lowry's The Giver, where being the Chosen One doesn't make others look up to or admire Jonas. He actually finds it difficult because it results in his friends distancing themselves from him, and he begins to wonder if it's even worth being the Chosen One. Taking this even a step further, others can become jealous of the character's chosenness because they don't feel that that character earned the respect, position, or powers they got. In Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, Boromir turns on Frodo, thinking he's more worthy and responsible, that he's the only one who can wield the ring's power appropriately to save the world. And well, we know how that turned out.
True.
In some cases, especially where a character is chosen by a weapon or an object, being the Chosen One requires certain character qualities. In the Dresden Files, the Sword of Faith only responds to those who are, guess what? Faithful, but it also requires the wielder to never break a promise while they are using it, creating a continuing struggle for the Chosen One. Character tests are a useful way to frame the personal development of the Chosen One, as a character has to grow to meet the character requirements. Or even further, they struggle to remain the way that the Chosen One is required to be. There are any number of personal conflicts that can arise from being the Chosen One, and whichever you choose is really just up to how you want to write your story. But fundamentally, the main thing that every writer needs to ask themselves about having a Chosen One is, what does it add to the story? For all the reasons that we've discussed, while Chosen One stories can be played in interesting ways, there are a few more pitfalls.
It's definitely the most about Gaia. Because at the end of the day, if anything, Gaia is the true Chosen One. She's the celestial spirit, the celestial being that is decided because of Anima's influence that she will do whatever's in her power to stop that influence from consuming all that exists.
To this trope than most. If the themes are no less nuanced, if a character is made more interesting, if overcoming their struggles feel more like an achievement, and their motivation is more sincere with them not being a Chosen One, then chances are the story would work better without it. There are a lot of Chosen One stories, a lot of good ones, and a lot of not so good ones. I've been lucky to have Verve sponsor this video, and if you want to watch a Chosen One series that avoids the pitfalls we've talked about in this video, then I recommend RWBY. You can watch it by clicking this link down in the description below for a 30-day free trial completely ad-free. While I won't spoil the story, Ruby Rose is a lineage Chosen One, meaning she comes from a long line of Chosen Ones before her, but the story works because it gives its supporting characters their own dramatic threads, and it ensures that Ruby's motivation, her character arcs, and relationships are each established apart from her role as the Chosen One, and it's all within the first act. It doesn't feel like the Cosmic Space Wizards are just saying, Chosen One. So Verve is this cool streaming service that combines Crunchyroll, Rooster Teeth, Funimation, and a bunch of other great channels, dozens of shows, subbed and dubbed, 1080p like Attack on Titan and Bravest Warrior. Oh, and they now have offline viewing available for premium members on iOS and Android, which means that you can sync your shows and watch them without an internet connection. I should press that this offer is only available for a limited time, so go click this link in the description to check all this out. A 30-day free trial with Verve Premium for access to all of this. Remember, RWBY and Fullmetal Alchemist. So what have we discussed about Chosen Ones today? Firstly, giving supporting characters each their own dramatic threads that aren't reliant on the Destiny thread makes for a multi-dimensional climax and ensures they each independently feel crucial to the resolution of the tension. Secondly, making the Destiny thread either an antagonistic force or morally ambiguous can heighten the dramatic tension as well as the thematic and emotional weight around how it unfolds. Thirdly, giving Chosen Ones character arcs, motivation, relationships, and struggles outside their chosenness not only makes them more relatable, but the tension arising from those isn't undermined by their chosenness. However, the Chosen One should still have arcs related to being the Chosen One.
Yeah.
Fourthly, in structuring a Chosen One story, these elements should be established within the first act and developed alongside any Destiny threads. But that's all from me, my longest on-writing video yet. If you want help decide what kind of on-writing topics I do in the future, then you can come support our supreme and glorious leader Mishka, who is in fact the Chosen One, at Patreon.
Alright. So yeah, definitely, we've got the reasonings down. I think the logic's pretty solid for it. And it doesn't have, like, 100% to do with a power, let's say. Even though Husai has, like, because of his training and what he does, and his combination between being a mage and being melee, his ambidextrousness, his overall, like, being human, just being, like, 20% larger than any other octopi that existed. It's also a huge thing as well, because he's, like, literally fucking massive. Yeah, I think that's fine.